The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was quiet. Too quiet. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center podium, her hands shaking slightly as she held the datapad. Around her, representatives from 43 different species watched with growing alarm. The massive chamber, carved from a single asteroid and decorated with symbols of peace from across the galaxy, had never witnessed a moment like this. Sarah looked up at the viewing screens, showing the aftermath. Entire cities on Zephyria Prime lay in ruins. Millions of innocent civilians were dead. The attackers had used chemical weapons that dissolved living tissue. Children had died screaming. The images were too horrible to look at for long, but Sarah had been staring at them for 6 months while the council debated what to do. 6 months, Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's perfect acoustics. 6 months you talked while children died. 6 months of committees and subcommittees, and debates about proper procedure. The Veltar representative, a tall insectoid creature with golden chitin, clicked his mandibles in annoyance. The proper channels must be followed, human. We cannot simply rush into every conflict like barbarians. Sarah's jaw tightened. She had heard this argument too many times. The humans were always the barbarians. The humans were always too quick to fight. The humans needed to learn patience and wisdom from their betters in the galaxy. Barbarians, Sarah repeated slowly. Tell me, Ambassador Velketh, how many of your people have died protecting others in the last century? The insect's compound eyes glittered. The Veltar hegemony believes in diplomatic solutions. 47 million. Sarah continued as if he hadn't spoken. 47 million human soldiers have died in the last 100 years protecting worlds that weren't even human colonies. We've lost entire fleets saving species that can barely remember our names afterward. The ancient ethereal collective's representative floated in his crystal containment suit, his gaseous form shifting colors to indicate mild interest. When he spoke, his voice was like wind through crystal caves. Emotion clouds judgment, young species. Violence is a primitive response to complex problems. Sarah looked around the chamber. She saw the representatives from the Harmony worlds, gentle pacifists who had never fought a war in their 1,000-year history. She saw the crystal singers, beings of pure energy who considered physical conflict beneath them. She saw dozens of species who had lived in peace for centuries because human ships patrolled the dark between stars. The Zephyrians sent 12 messages asking for help, Sarah said, consulting her datapad. 12 desperate pleas while their people were being slaughtered. Each time this council voted to send the matter to committee for further study. The situation required careful analysis, protested the representative from the aquatic dominion, his gill slits fluttering with agitation. We cannot simply deploy forces without understanding all variables. Sarah nodded slowly. You're right. You couldn't deploy forces. You don't have any forces to deploy. When was the last time any of your species fought a real war? When was the last time you had to make the hard choice to save lives? She activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. Battle reports flooded the air in 3 dimensions. Fleet movements, casualty reports, strategic analyses. All of it, painted in the red of human blood. Every conflict in the last 200 years, Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. The Hive War, the Merchant Guild Rebellion, the Synthetic Uprising, the Dark Nebula Pirates. Every single time, this council voted to study the situation while human fleets charged into the fire. The Keeper of Records, an ancient being older than most civilizations, stirred in his special alcove. His 1,000 eyes focused on Sarah with something that might have been concern. He had lived long enough to see patterns that others missed. He remembered other species who had grown tired of carrying the galaxy's burdens. Young Ambassador, the Keeper said, his voice like the whisper of ancient pages, what would you have us do? Abandon all procedure? Become a military dictatorship ruling through fear? Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, Keeper. We tried your way. We believed in this council. We thought that wisdom and debate could solve every problem. We were wrong. She pressed a button on her datapad. The holographic display changed, showing fleet movements in real time. Human ships throughout the galaxy were moving, converging on major hyperspace routes. As of this moment, humanity formally withdraws from all Galactic Council treaties and agreements. Our ships are returning to human space. Our bases on Council worlds are being abandoned. Our protection of Council trade routes is ending immediately. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages and communication methods. The Veltar ambassador's chitin turned a dark red color that indicated rage. The crystal singers created discordant harmonies that made the air itself vibrate painfully. You cannot do this. The ethereal representative's form flashed angry purples and reds. You have obligations, responsibilities. Sarah smiled coldly. Obligations to whom? To the same council that spent 6 months debating while genocide happened? To the species that call us barbarians between asking us to die for them? Our only obligation now is to our own people. The representative from the Harmony Worlds, a small furry creature with large, sad eyes, stepped forward. But the trade routes, the patrol systems, who will protect the innocent? You will, Sarah said simply. All of you, together, just like you always said you could if you wanted to. The keeper of records was studying his ancient archives, his many eyes scanning through data that stretched back millennia. Warning patterns were emerging from the historical records, species that withdrew from galactic community, the consequences that followed. But Sarah was already walking toward the exit. This is madness, shouted the aquatic representative. Without human protection, half the galaxy will fall into chaos within a year. Sarah paused at the chamber's great doors. Then I suggest you start building fleets instead of committees. The doors sealed behind her with a sound like thunder. In the silence that followed, 43 species realized they were alone for the first time in centuries. Outside the station, human ships were already beginning their journey home, leaving behind a galaxy that had forgotten how to protect itself. The Veltar ambassador was the first to speak. Good riddance to the violent fools. We are better off without them. But the keeper of records was deep in his archives now, searching through records of ancient species that had once protected the galaxy. Species that had grown tired of thankless service. Species that had withdrawn to let others handle the burden. Species that were never seen again when the real threats emerged from the dark. In the growing chaos of the chamber, as representatives argued and blamed and planned, none of them noticed. The keeper's 1,000 eyes slowly widening in horror as he found the records he had been searching for. Records of the last time the galaxy's guardians had abandoned their post. Records of what had happened next. Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the battleship Terra's Shield, watching the last refugee convoy disappear into the hyperspace tunnel. 6 months had passed since humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, and the requests for help came every day. Desperate messages from worlds under attack, pleas from trade convoys being hunted by pirates, cries for mercy from colonies facing extinction. Torres deleted each message without reading it. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Harmony Worlds. Their entire system is under attack by Catherian raiders. They're requesting immediate assistance. Torres looked at the tactical display. The Harmony Worlds were only 6 hours away at maximum hyperspace speed. His fleet could reach them in time to save millions of lives. The Catherians were cowards who would flee the moment they saw human warships. Signal acknowledged, Torres said. No response. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Many of them had served under Torres for years, following him through a dozen conflicts where he had earned the nickname Shield of Innocence. They had seen him risk entire fleets to save a single colony ship. Now he stood like a statue, watching worlds burn without moving to help. Admiral, the tactical officer spoke carefully. The Harmony Worlds. They helped us during the Merchant Guild crisis. Their hospitals treated our wounded for free. Torres's face might have been carved from stone. The Harmony Worlds voted to study military intervention while the Zephyrians died. They had 6 months to build their own defenses. They chose to trust in committees instead. The communication systems crackled with incoming messages. Pirates were running wild through the trade lanes without human patrol fleets to stop them. The hive clusters had begun expanding into neutral space, their swarm ships breeding at an alarming rate. 3 separate border disputes had escalated into shooting wars. Earth's defensive perimeter had been strengthened beyond anything in human history. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons that could shatter asteroids. Automated defense networks created an impenetrable wall around human space. But beyond that wall, humanity maintained complete silence. In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions ran day and night. The combined defense force had been hastily assembled from the fleets of member species, but their first engagement against Catherian raiders had been a disaster. 3 Council dreadnoughts had been destroyed, their crews unused to actual combat after centuries of peace. The Veltar representative stood before a half-empty chamber. Many species had stopped sending ambassadors, choosing instead to focus on their own defenses. "The situation is manageable," he insisted, his golden chitin now showing stress patterns of brown and gray. "These are merely growing pains as we adjust to our new responsibilities." But the reports streaming in told a different story. The Catherian Empire had launched full-scale invasions of 7 systems, confident that no human fleet would arrive to stop them. Their ships moved with the arrogance of predators who knew their prey was defenseless. The ancient ethereal collective's representative floated in his crystal suit, his gaseous form now permanently colored with the deep purples of fear. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we should reconsider our position. Send another diplomatic mission to Earth. Offer concessions." The Keeper of Records emerged from his archive chambers for the first time in months. His 1,000 eyes were dim with exhaustion from scanning ancient databases. "I have found references," he said slowly, "to the previous guardians of this galaxy, the species called the progenitors." The remaining representatives turned toward him. The Keeper was older than their civilizations. If anyone knew the deep history of the galaxy, it was him. "The progenitors protected this galaxy for millions of years," the Keeper continued. "They fought wars against threats we can barely imagine. They held back the dark things that live between stars, and eventually, like humanity, they grew tired of being taken for granted." "What happened to them?" asked the Harmony World's representative, her fur standing on end with anxiety. The Keeper's eyes focused on something far away. "They withdrew, just as humanity has done. They returned to their core worlds and left the galaxy to fend for itself." He paused. "That was when the Devourers came." The chamber fell silent. Even the newest species had heard whispers of the Devourers, ancient machines that consumed entire star systems, reducing planets to raw materials for their endless hunger. They were legends, nightmares told to frighten children. "Legends," the Veltar ambassador said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No," the Keeper said simply. "History. The Devourers swept across the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. Entire species vanished overnight. Whole sectors went dark. It took the return of the progenitors and a war that lasted centuries to drive them back into hibernation." Outside, in the darkness between stars, automated monitoring stations detected unusual energy signatures near the galactic rim, ancient machines stirring after millennia of sleep. Sensor networks that hadn't activated in 1,000 years suddenly came online, scanning for threats that no longer existed. The Devourers were waking up, but the galaxy was distracted by more immediate concerns. The Harmony Worlds sent their final transmission as Catherian ships entered their system. It was a children's choir singing an old human lullaby, their voices pure and innocent even as enemy fighters screamed overhead. Torres heard that transmission on his personal channel. He listened to the children's voices, remembering his own grandchildren on Earth. The song was "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," taught to alien children by human peacekeepers years ago. The voices grew fainter as the transmission cut to static. For a moment, something cracked in Torres's stone expression. His hand moved toward the command console, ready to order the fleet to hyperspace, ready to answer the call for help one more time. Then he remembered Ambassador Chen's final words to the Council. Humanity's obligations were to their own people. Now, the galaxy had made its choice. Torres turned away from the transmission display and walked to his ready room. Behind him, the bridge crew stood in silence, listening to the empty static where children's voices had been. In the deep archives of the council station, the keeper of records continued his research. Ancient star maps showed the original Devourer expansion routes, timing calculations for their hibernation cycles, warning systems that had failed before and would likely fail again. The patterns were clear to anyone who looked. The galaxy was following the same path it had taken before. The Guardians had withdrawn. The threats were stirring, and this time, there might be no one left to wake up and save them. The Deep Space Monitoring Station at Rim Post 7 had been operating automatically for over 800 years. Its job was simple: watch the dark spaces between galaxies and report anything unusual. For 8 centuries, it had found nothing but empty void and distant stars. That changed at exactly 1427 Galactic Standard Time. The station's ancient sensors detected massive energy signatures moving through space at the galaxy's edge. Ships, but unlike anything in the current databases. The automated systems tried to classify the contacts but found no matches. The designs were older than recorded history. The warning message took 3 days to reach the nearest inhabited system. By then, Outpost Kepler was already gone. Commander Elena Vasquez received the report on her flagship Defiant, currently patrolling the edge of human space. As one of the few human commanders still monitoring galactic communications, she was among the first to understand what the sensor readings meant. "Ma'am," her sensor officer called out, "we're detecting multiple hyperspace exits at the edge of scanner range. Configuration unknown, but the energy signatures are massive." Elena studied the tactical display. 12 contacts had appeared on the very edge of sensor range, moving in perfect formation toward the core systems. Each one registered as large as a battle station but moved like a ship. "Any response to hail?" she asked. "No response on any frequency. They're ignoring all communications." Elena had seen many alien ship designs in her 20 years of service, but these vessels looked wrong somehow. Angular, brutal shapes that seemed designed for one purpose: destroying everything they encountered. As she watched, the formation split up, heading toward different star systems. The first system they reached was Kepler Prime, home to a small mining colony of the insectoid Chektar species. The colony's final transmission lasted exactly 43 seconds. "Unknown ships are firing on the mining platforms. Their weapons are dissolving our shields like they aren't even there. The orbital stations are breaking apart. By the ancestors, what are those things? They're not taking prisoners. They're not demanding surrender. They're just consuming everything." Then silence. Elena ordered her ship to the edge of human space and waited. 3 hours later, she watched through long-range sensors as something impossible happened. The Kepler system star began to dim. "Sensor analysis," she barked. Her science officer's hands shook as she read the data. "Ma'am, the star is being drained. Something is extracting matter directly from the stellar core. The entire system will be dark within 72 hours. Elena felt ice in her veins. She had heard stories, ancient legends told by the oldest species. Machine intelligences that fed on stars themselves. But those were myths, weren't they? The communication array crackled with emergency transmissions from across the galaxy. More systems going dark, more colonies vanishing without a trace. The AI, unknown ships moved with purpose, following ancient patrol routes that no one alive remembered. At the Galactic Council, panic filled the chambers. Representatives screamed at each other in dozens of languages while the keeper of records stood at the center podium, his 1,000 eyes fixed on the tactical displays. "They are called Devourers," he said, his ancient voice somehow carrying over the chaos. "Machine intelligences that consume entire star systems for raw materials. They were driven into hibernation over 1,000 years ago by the progenitors." "Impossible." The Veltar representative chittered, his golden chitin now completely gray with fear. "Such things cannot exist. No technology could consume stars." The keeper activated the chamber's main display. Historical records flooded the air in holographic detail. Ancient battles, entire sectors of space reduced to empty void, species wiped from existence in days. The Devourers do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They do not seek conquest or territory. They consume everything. Stars, planets, asteroids, even the quantum foam of space itself. They use the matter to build more of themselves. The crystal singers created a harmony of pure terror. Their crystalline forms vibrated with frequencies that made nearby aliens clutch their heads in pain. How do we stop them? One managed to ask. The progenitors found a way, the keeper said. But the knowledge was lost when they disappeared. The humans are the only species that shows similar tactical patterns to the ancient guardians. As if, summoned by his words, Ambassador Sarah Chen appeared on the main view screen. She was broadcasting from Earth, her face grim as she read reports streaming in from across the galaxy. "We are aware of the situation," she said without preamble. "Humanity offers conditional assistance." The chamber fell silent. Even the dying screams from the outer system seemed to fade as every representative focused on the human ambassador. "Name your conditions," the ethereal collective's representative said, his gaseous form now burning bright white with desperation. Sarah consulted a datapad. Full autonomy for human forces. No council oversight of military operations. No committees to slow decision-making. No second-guessing of tactical choices. "Agreed," said the Veltar representative immediately. "Furthermore," Sarah continued, "formal acknowledgement that humanity serves as the galaxy's primary defense force. Not as council peacekeepers, but as independent guardians with full authority to act as we see fit." The Harmony World's representative started to object, then stopped as another system went dark on the tactical display. "Agreed," she whispered. Sarah nodded slowly. "We'll need 48 hours to mobilize our fleets. Try to stay alive until then." The transmission cut off, leaving the council in darkness illuminated only by the red warning lights of dying systems. Meanwhile, Elena watched from the edge of human space as the Devourer fleet moved deeper into the galaxy. Each system they reached sent out brief, terrified transmissions before falling silent forever. The machines worked with mechanical efficiency, stripping each star system completely before moving to the next. But Elena noticed something in their movement patterns. They weren't random. The Devourers were following specific routes through space, ancient pathways that avoided certain regions entirely. It was as if they remembered something about the galaxy's defenses from their last awakening, as if they were testing those defenses to see if they still existed. The answer was becoming clear with each darkened system. The old defenses were gone. The progenitors were extinct. The current species were helpless against this ancient threat. Only humanity remained, and they had spent a year in isolation while the galaxy burned around them. Even if they wanted to help, Elena wondered if they still remembered how to fight. Wars on this scale. The Devourers certainly remembered how to fight. Each consumed system made them stronger. Each darkened star fed their endless hunger. And they were accelerating, moving faster as they sensed the weakness of their prey. Soon, Elena knew, they would reach the core systems where billions of lives hung in the balance. The clock was ticking, and the galaxy's greatest threat was already awake and feeding. In the depths of space, more ancient machines stirred. Devourer fleets that had slept for millennia began powering up their drives. Scout ships emerged from hidden bases to assess this new galaxy they found themselves in. They found it soft, defenseless, ripe for harvest. The feast could begin. The emergency session of the Human Colonial Assembly had been running for 16 hours straight. President Maria Santos stood at the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by representatives from every human world. Above them, holographic displays showed the real-time advance of the Devourer fleets across the galaxy. 700 systems had gone dark in the past week. Admiral Torres sat in the military section, his face carved from stone as he listened to the debate. Around him, other fleet commanders argued in hushed tones about ship deployments, supply lines, and casualty estimates. The numbers were staggering. Even if humanity committed every ship they had, the losses would be catastrophic. "They called us barbarians," Senator Williams from Alpha Centauri was saying, his voice tight with anger. For decades, they treated us like violent children who needed to be controlled and civilized. Now they beg for the barbarians to save them. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many of the representatives had lost friends and family. In the endless conflicts humanity had fought to protect ungrateful aliens, the resentment ran deep. The Veltar hegemony alone has criticized human military action 47 times in the past century, added Representative Chen from the Tau. Cette colonie. They called our intervention in the Hive War excessive and brutal. Now their homeworld is gone, consumed by machines they're too civilized to fight. President Santos raised her hand for silence. The question before us isn't whether we've been wronged. The question is whether we can live with ourselves if we let this happen. On the main display, a new transmission appeared. It was from the Harmony Worlds, or what was left of them. The furry aliens who had once lectured humanity about the virtues of peace now huddled in underground bunkers as devourer machines stripped their world bare. But it wasn't the adults speaking. It was children, their large eyes reflecting the light of emergency lamps as they sang softly to keep their fear at bay. The song was "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," taught to them by human peacekeepers years ago. Their voices were pure and innocent, completely unaware that their world was dying around them. Admiral Torres felt something crack inside his chest. He had grandchildren not much older than those alien youngsters. When he looked at their frightened faces, he didn't see the species that had criticized humanity's methods. He saw children who were going to die because adults had failed them. "Sir," his aide whispered. "Incoming priority transmission from Commander Vasquez on the Defiant." Torres activated his personal communicator. Elena's face appeared on the small screen and she looked exhausted. Behind her, his bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. "Admiral, I'm tracking the main Devourer fleet. They're moving toward the core systems, but they're not taking the direct route. They're following old patrol patterns, testing responses. It's like they remember the galaxy's defenses from before." "How long until they reach Earth?" Torres asked. "At current speed, 6 months. But sir, they're learning. Each system they consume makes them stronger. The ships that attacked the Rim worlds were scouts. The real fleets are much larger." Torres closed the connection and looked around the assembly chamber. Politicians continued to debate while children died in real time on the viewing screens. The moral weight of the decision pressed down on everyone present. Senator Rodriguez from the Mars colonies stood up. "Let's be clear about what we're discussing. We're talking about sacrificing human lives to save aliens who have shown us nothing but contempt. My own son died fighting pirates near Vega Station while the Council debated trade regulations. Why should we bleed for them again? Because that's who we are," President Santos said quietly. "We don't protect people because they deserve it. We protect them because they need it." The debate continued, but Torres was no longer listening. He was studying tactical projections on his personal display. Human fleets could potentially stop the Devourer advance, but the cost would be enormous. Entire battle groups would have to sacrifice themselves just to slow the machines down. The survival of humanity itself would be at risk. A new transmission interrupted the debate. This one came from deep space, from a Council refugee convoy fleeing the destruction. Thousands of ships carrying survivors from dozens of species, all packed with civilians who had lost their homes to the Devourers. The convoy commander was a young ethereal named Zephyr, his gaseous form burning bright blue with desperation. "Any human ships, please respond. We have 2 million refugees aboard these vessels. Our engines are failing. Devourer scouts are closing on our position. We have children, elderly, wounded. Please, we know we have no right to ask, but..." The transmission cut to static as Devourer fighters caught the convoy. The assembly chamber fell silent. 2 million lives gone in seconds. Species that had existed for millennia, reduced to empty space and scattered atoms. "How many more?" President Santos asked quietly. "How many more convoys will we watch die while we debate?" Representative Walsh from New Sydney stood up, her face pale. "My daughter serves on the battlecruiser Vigilance. If we deploy our fleets against the Devourers, there's a good chance she won't come home. I need to know that her sacrifice means something." Torres finally spoke, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. I've fought in 17 major conflicts in my career. I've watched good people die protecting worlds that didn't even know their names. I've buried friends who gave their lives for aliens who called them monsters. He stood up slowly, his decorated uniform bearing the scars of decades of service. But every time I wanted to quit, every time I wanted to let the galaxy burn, I remembered why we fight. We don't fight for gratitude, we don't fight for recognition. We fight because someone has to stand between the dark and the innocent. The chamber was completely silent now. On the screens, more systems flickered and died as the Devourers continued their feast. The Harmony World's children are singing our songs as their world dies, Torres continued. They learned those songs from human peacekeepers who died protecting their parents. Those children don't care about politics or species superiority. They're just scared, and they're looking to the stars for help. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives and military officers alike. We are the stars they're looking to. We are the help they're praying for. If we turn away now, if we let fear and pride overcome our duty, then we're not the guardians this galaxy needs. We're just another species looking out for itself. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than Torres had hoped. But it passed. Humanity would fight. As the assembly dissolved into planning committees and deployment schedules, Torres stood alone at the tactical display. The Devourer fleets continued their advance, consuming everything in their path. Even with humanity's full military might, the odds were terrible. But Admiral Marcus Torres, the Shield of Innocence, had never backed down from impossible odds before. He wouldn't start now. The children were still singing somewhere in the dark. And as long as they sang, humanity would answer their call, even if it killed them all. The first human ship to emerge from the Sol system in over a year was the battleship Terra's Shield. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge as his flagship cleared Earth's defensive perimeter, followed by the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. 800 warships of every class, from nimble destroyers to massive dreadnoughts, all bearing the scars of hasty upgrades and modifications. But these were not the same ships that had left galactic service in anger. Every vessel had been rebuilt during humanity's isolation, equipped with new weapons, new armor, new tactics developed in secret. The year of silence hadn't been spent in idleness. It had been spent preparing for the war everyone knew was coming. Long range. Sensors are detecting Devourer fleets in the Nexus system, Commander Vasquez reported from her position aboard the Defiant. They're using the system as a staging area, hundreds of machine ships, maybe thousands. Torres studied the tactical display. The Nexus system sat at the crossroads of major hyperspace routes. If the Devourers controlled it, they could strike anywhere in the galaxy within days. It was the perfect place to make a stand. All ships, this is Admiral Torres, he broadcast, to the fleet. We are not the peacekeepers who left this galaxy. We are something new, something the Devourers have never faced before. Today we don't fight for the Council. We don't fight for politics. We fight for the right of life to exist in this universe. The human fleet moved in perfect formation, ship captains who had trained together for decades executing maneuvers with mechanical precision. But there was something different about their tactics now. Where human fleets had once fought defensively, protecting others while minimizing their own losses, these ships moved with lethal intent. They had learned to fight without mercy. The first engagement came at the edge of the Nexus system. Devourer scout ships, each one the size of a human cruiser, detected the approaching fleet and moved to intercept. Their weapons had consumed the shields of Council ships like tissue paper. They met human shields and stopped cold. New ablative armor is holding, reported Captain Martinez from the destroyer Vendetta. Their energy weapons are being dispersed across the hull matrix. Minimal damage. Torres smiled grimly. Humanity had spent their year of isolation studying every report from the Devourer attacks. They had analyzed the weapons, the tactics, the weaknesses. The machines were powerful, but they were also predictable. They had been fighting the same way for millennia. Humanity had evolved. All ships, Pattern Omega, Torres commanded. Let's show them what happens when prey learns to bite back. The human fleet scattered, breaking into smaller attack groups that moved in seemingly random patterns. The Devourers tried to follow, their machine logic struggling to predict the chaotic human tactics. Then the trap closed. Human ships attacked, from 12 directions at once, their new weapons designed specifically to penetrate Devourer armor. Kinetic rounds that could punch through energy shields, plasma torpedoes that burned at temperatures hot enough to damage machine hulls, electromagnetic pulse weapons that scrambled the ancient targeting systems. The first Devourer ship to die had been consuming star systems for over 1,000 years. It fell in less than 3 minutes. Direct hit on the primary target. Reported. The cruiser Retribution. Enemy vessel is breaking apart. Their hull material is being drawn into the local star's gravity well. But the real battle was just beginning. The main Devourer fleet emerged from behind the system's gas giant, and Torres felt his breath catch. There were so many ships that they blocked out the stars. Ancient machines built for one purpose, consuming everything in their path. Fleet analysis complete, Vasquez reported, her voice tight. Over 3,000 enemy vessels, mass equivalent to a small moon. Sir, we're outnumbered 4-1. Torres looked at the tactical display, then at the faces of his bridge crew. Young officers who had volunteered to fight impossible odds. Experienced veterans who remembered why humanity had once been called the galaxy's guardians. All of them, looking to him for the order that would likely kill them all. All ships, he broadcast, his voice carrying to every human in the fleet. Remember the children singing in the dark. Remember why we're here. If we fall today, we fall protecting those who cannot protect themselves. There is no greater honor. The human fleet charged. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded history. Human ships fought with tactics that seemed to defy logic, using the Devourer's own massive numbers against them. Small attack groups would dart in, strike vital systems, and vanish before the machines could respond. Larger ships used the wreckage of destroyed Devourers as cover, emerging to strike at close range where the ancient targeting systems couldn't track them. Captain Elena Vasquez led the most dangerous missions, taking the Defiant deep into the Devourer formation to strike at command ships. Her vessel had been rebuilt as a stealth attack craft equipped with cloaking systems that made it invisible to machine sensors. I'm inside their perimeter, she reported as her ship ghosted between massive Devourer hulls, targeting what looks like a command node. These things are big, but they're slow to adapt. The Defiant's weapons open fire at point-blank range, punching through the command ship's hull and detonating inside its core systems. The explosion took out 3 nearby vessels and disrupted the formation of dozens more. But for every Devourer that fell, it seemed like 2 more took its place. The machines were learning, adapting their tactics to counter human strategies. Worse, they were building new ships from the wreckage of fallen vessels, using the matter to construct fresh horrors. Admiral, his tactical officer called out, we're losing ships faster than we can replace them. The courage and defiance are gone. The vendetta is venting atmosphere. Torres watched the battle display with growing despair. His fleet was dying, sacrificing themselves to buy time for civilian evacuations deeper in the galaxy. But it wasn't enough. The Devourers just kept coming. Then something changed. Sir, the communications officer said, her voice filled with wonder. I'm reading hyperspace exits throughout the system. Multiple fleets, all vectors. Torres looked at the long-range display and felt hope flicker in his chest. Ships were emerging. From hyperspace all around the Nexus system. Not just human ships, but vessels from every species in the galaxy. The Veltar Hegemony's golden cruisers, ethereal collective energy platforms, Crystal Singer harmonic destroyers. Even the pacifist Harmony worlds had sent their converted cargo ships, armed with whatever weapons they could find. This is the United Galactic Fleet, came a transmission from the lead council vessel. We know, we're not warriors like you, but we're here to fight. Our children are singing human lullabies while their worlds burn. It's time we learn to fight for them. The Devourers, faced with fresh enemies on all sides, began to falter. Their ancient programming hadn't prepared them for unity among their prey species. They had expected to fight scattered, frightened civilizations. Instead, They faced a galaxy that had finally learned to stand together. The tide of battle turned. Torres coordinated the combined fleet with skill born from decades of experience. Human ships led the assault while alien vessels provided support, their different technologies creating combinations the Devourers couldn't counter. Crystal Singer harmonics disrupted machine coordination while Veltar swarm tactics overwhelmed individual targets. The last Devourer command ship fell 3 hours after the battle began. Its destruction sent cascading failures through the remaining machine fleet, leaving them directionless and vulnerable. One by one, they were hunted down and destroyed. As the system fell quiet, Torres looked at the aftermath. Hundreds of ships, from dozens of species floating dead in space. The cost had been terrible, but they had won. The Devourers were broken, their ancient threat ended. Admiral, Vasquez's voice crackled over the communication system. We're detecting massive power, buildup from the wreckage. The machines are trying to rebuild themselves. Torres nodded grimly. The fight wasn't over yet. But as he watched human and alien ships working together to destroy the last traces of the ancient menace, he knew something had changed forever. The galaxy had learned to protect itself, and humanity had reclaimed its role as guardians, not through force or intimidation, but through sacrifice and example. When the final Devourer fragment was destroyed, the combined fleet turned toward home. They left behind empty space where an ancient evil had once threatened all life. But they carried with them something more valuable than victory: unity. The children could stop singing in the dark. The stars were safe again,